This is Eric Rutan of Cannibal Corpse. You are listening to the Scars and Guitars podcast with Andrew McKay Smith.
G'day everybody, thanks so much for tuning in. I really appreciate it. You're such a great audience, so I love having chats with you on Instagram and Facebook and through email and all the rest of it, because you're a very dedicated audience who enjoy these conversations with luminaries from the extreme metal, hard rock and heavy metal scenes. And this is a great example of the sort of conversations that I like to bring to you, because it features James Bulloch, aka Human Furnace. He's the front man for Ringworm. They're a group from Cleveland in Ohio in the United States, of course. Now, the catalyst for the conversation is due to the launch of a new album, their first for Nuclear Blast. It is called Seeing Through Fire, and it is one of the albums of the year so far. I'm enjoying this one a lot. It's a brutal menace of a thing, and you all know that I love the hardest and heaviest sounds available. Great example of it through Seeing Through Fire. Now, of course, we talk all about the album, its creation, James's thoughts on potentially what it's going to do for the band. Hopefully it brings them a bigger audience, because it certainly deserves to. Maybe Nuclear Blast, the association with Nuclear Blast will now do that and give them a bit more of a reach into Europe. And he has some interesting comments on the band's back catalogue and why that's very hard to get a hold of for the casual fan. You dedicated types will always find a way to get the albums. But yeah, it's interesting to hear his thoughts on that. And another unique aspect of this chat is I always like having a chat with bands that have been signed with or to Victory Records about the label head, Tony Brummel. He's a fascinating guy, because go and Google his name and you'll see that some of the bands that were signed to Victory Records have some less than favourable things to say about the bloke, and you'll hear what James has to say about him and his experience on the record label as well. All right, let's dive into it. Before we get to the chat, if you're listening via the podcast apps, I've got a tune to share with you. Of course, it's from Seeing Through Fire. This one's called Thought Crimes. I can't play the song if you're listening and watching via bloody YouTube, though. I'll get a copyright strike, unfortunately. So if you're on YouTube, here's the chat. If you've tuned in via the podcast apps, here's Thought Crimes, and the chat will follow. Let's go.
It's a Hello there.
Good morning from my perspective, and probably good afternoon or good evening for you. How are you, James?
I'm fine. How's it going?
Yeah, great. How's the calls, or the Zoomers as they're called these days, mate? How have they been going for this album?
Fine. I'm doing a lot of them. So today I'm doing like 8.
Oh gosh, yeah. Is
Yeah,
there
it's
any
fucking nuts, but whatever. That's how it is when you got a new record. You
people
got
have
to do all
accused?
this shit.
Yeah, I get you. People have accused me of hinting at xenophobia when I ask this question. You'll see why it's ridiculous when I ask it. But is there any country or group of people that you find are particularly unusual in the way that they ask questions? For example, I was talking to the drummer from Under Oath, gosh, almost a decade ago now, and he was telling me that the German media types, they tend to ask questions like, so this album is pretty good. The last album was absolutely garbage. Why is it so much better?
That's funny you say that because I've always found a lot of German people to be pretty upfront with that type of stuff. You know, they'll be like, "Yeah, last record sucked." They're really, and honestly, I kind of appreciate that kind of candor. But besides that, I did a Zoom with a French publication, whatever it was, I'm not sure. But I had trouble with it because he spoke pretty good English, but he spoke so fast that I just couldn't understand him. So every question I had to have him repeat it like 3-4 times before I understood what the hell he was saying. So that was a little difficult. But other than that, I kind of just roll with the punches. Nothing really offends me too much. Even if someone doesn't like our band, I don't even give a shit,
Yeah, it's a good point. Yep, I've taken that attitude with my show as well. The appreciation is in the eye of the listener or the reader or the beholder, in other words. And mate, we don't know what shoes they've been walking in up to the point that they've done the interview or listened to what it is that we put out there.
You got that right.
Mm. So look, this album here, Seeing Through Fire. Okay, I've had it now for a couple of days, and I've listened to it a fair bit in the background as I work away from home. I'm a journalist, you see. So I get to do that. And my first impressions are that it's a heavy, brutal bastard of an album. And
the last one was shit.
I've got to be completely honest with you, okay? And this is rare for me. I was certainly, I'd heard of your name before, but I hadn't dived into your catalogue as much as I might have liked to now that I've gotten familiar with this album here. Because right. I enjoy it because I like straight up brutal, heavy music. But I like brutal heavy music that you can actually listen to as well, not just noise like some of it is that comes out, but it's just heavy for heavy's sake. There's some intent there with you guys. And I might be wrong here, but I think this is your 8th studio album, but you got a ton of splits, EPs and 7
I think this is our 9th.
9th, okay. Yeah.
Yeah. And then a lot of singles and EPs and comps and all that.
Yeah, you've done stuff with Mindsnare, a band from Sydney or Melbourne, I think, too. That was cool.
Yeah, those are our boys. Love those guys.
Check that out. Yeah, that was great. Yeah. But do you feel, I know you've done stuff with Tony and Victory and, as I say, you've been around for 20 or 25 odd years at this point. But
35.
35, Jesus. Okay. There you go. But now you're with Nuclear Blast, and given the strength of the album, and that it should appeal to many extreme metal fans, the extreme metal fan that pays a fair bit to go on 70,000 tons of metal and goes to Varkin and Bloodstock and all those sort of things. Do you feel like as though this is the album that'll introduce you to that broader extreme metal audience?
Yeah, we're certainly hoping so. I mean, we've been at this for a really long time. So it's like, and our music it's niche music, you know what I mean? It's not, in the grand scheme of things, it's not very listener friendly, I guess, to a mainstream audience. But that being said, there's still a huge part of the heavy music community that still doesn't know about us, that would like us if they heard us. They just haven't, because we haven't showed up on their radar. So we're definitely hoping with Nuclear Blasts, the reach that they got, they're going to introduce us to that, that section of heavy music listeners that probably would not have found us on a regular, dive into what's out there,
Yeah.
So yeah, we're definitely hoping that's going to open up some eyes.
Well, your vocal, it's an absolute menace across this album, as it is on other albums, but your vocal is very much akin to another physical instrument. Okay, it's often said that the vocal is another instrument, but
Sure.
your vocal really plays that role, given the type of power that you've displayed throughout the album. And one, I did go back into your back catalogue and I had a brief listen to things, but one of the things that I picked up was that it sounds like as though you finally have the sound through the type of production that brings out the best characteristics of the band's sound without overcrowding. So nothing's really competing in the oral quality there. So do you feel the same way?
Yeah, we for a good chunk of our catalog, the past few records, we recorded. Once bands get comfortable in a certain studio, you usually stay there for a little bit, when you get comfortable with stuff. And naturally, that was the same for us. And then for the last two records, we for the record previously to this new one, we recorded at a place called Mercenary Studios, and we recorded there. But we had one of the young brothers from the West Coast. He did the mix on it, which we were very happy with. And I did the vocals at the previous studio, so it was kind of a mixed match of stuff. So when we went into this record, Noah, who was our engineer at Mercenary, he was, chomping at the bit. He's like, just let me do the whole record. Let me record it, mix it, and master. Just let me do it. He's like, he's got a great ear. And he's like, I think I want to, I know how to do this right for you guys. So this time we concentrate everything and did everything in one spot this time. And Noah you're right. He was able to kind of get a certain sound out of us that's very heavy, very raw, but at the same time, it's very listenable. You could hear everything that's going on, and it doesn't sound like a train wreck of just, it doesn't sound like it was recorded on a boombox heavy. You know what I mean? It's clear, but it's really raw and nasty. So he was able to, give us a kind of a fresh sound, I guess, kind of I don't want to say reinvent, because we always approach the studio the same way as far as what we do, as far as me singing or Matt playing guitar, whatever. But the way he was able to put it together and tweak it and mix it all together, we're super happy with it.
Yeah. Yeah. So did you purposefully or with intent, because you're now with Nuclear Blast and there's potentially that different audience, did you write different songs this time for the album?
No, absolutely not. Actually, this record, just like probably hundreds and thousands of other bands out there, the little pandemic lockdown screwed everybody up. It really threw a monkey wrench in just about every facet of living, especially music. It really screwed everybody up. So, we had finished our contract with Relapse Records, and at the time, nobody really knew what was going on, so they decided to pass on. They had a choice if they wanted to do our next record or not. They had first dibs at it, and they decided to pass, and we were like, okay, that's fine. So at a certain point, we were left without a label, without a manager, without a booking agent, without everything, you know what I mean? Let alone being able to go out and play. So we had nothing really. Our Facebook page got hacked. We had nothing. So we just kind of made a decision. We're like, what do you want to do here? And we're not done making music. So we're just like, let's just make a record, So we wrote a record. We went in, recorded it ourselves. We were going to put it out ourselves. And when we were done with it, Noah again was like, hey guys, what are you going to do with this? We're like, well, we don't know. We don't have a label. So we may just, at this stage of the game, people that heard us will buy this record probably, and we'll be content with that. And then he's like, you know what, you really should shop this around because it's a pretty good record, guys. So I made some calls, and a buddy of mine, Austin, I'm like, hey man, a lot of people. What do you think about, spreading this around, seeing if anybody's interested? And right off the bat, Nuclear Blast came back to us. They're like, yeah, we want to put this out for you. So the record was made before we even had a label. We were just doing it for us. And then they heard it and they really liked it. And they're like, yes, let's work together. And we're like, okay, let's do it. Yeah.
Is Europe your bread and butter, or is it still the United States?
It's probably, I wouldn't call it bread and butter because we don't really make any money doing this, but yeah, I mean, our reach and like, we don't, overseas in Europe and stuff, like they have a tendency, and this is just natural. If you're not over there a lot, they'll tend to forget about you. The turnover rate in like the hardcore scene or the metal scene is so fast, and if you're not constantly over there, they're going to forget about you. And that's understandable. So we had the intentions of going back over in 2019 with our previous record, and then the world shut down for 2 years. So that didn't happen because the last time we've been over there would be 2016. So although we still do, I would imagine we do okay there. But primarily we just, we've just been a band that plays in the States for quite a few years because it's just been too hard to get over there. So again, with Nuclear Blast to help us give us some more reach over there, we're planning on coming back probably in the spring or summer next year and maybe try to hit some of those big festivals that we've never been able to get in the conversation for, So,
yeah, that's interesting. I would have thought that some of those festivals would have been champing at the bit to have you on board.
Well, you would think that sometimes we're a mystery band for even myself. It's like, sometimes they either fall through the cracks and a lot of times if you don't have any like, a manager or someone to get you into those conversations when they're putting these things together, no one's just going to come to you. You got to have someone in there that's pulling for you, that's pushing your name. And for a long time, we just didn't have we had a manager, but not anyone that had that type of juice. You know what I mean? You need someone out there that's kind of pushing you. And so hopefully that's going to change. I mean, we certainly are open to do it. Now we've done some few in the past, but we really want to kind of hit all those this time. I mean, I certainly think we're worthy of it.
No question about that. You've certainly got the heritage and the legacy there, and that's what those festivals are all about, honouring the tremendous legacy of so many bands.
Yeah.
And
well, it's strange too because we're if I have to explain it, we're more of a blue collar band. I mean, sometimes little or no fanfare, but we just keep putting out records. There's some bands that put out 2 records, break up for 20 years, get back together, and then they're hot, new thing again. We've quietly sometimes quietly, but just continue to put out records, over the past 35 years. So sometimes, that doesn't amount to a lot of currency with some people, it's like they'll prefer you just to be a band that put out one good record and break up and then get back together, but we still like making records. So we just keep putting them out.
Yeah, it's a strange old world that way, but I think the fans have what can you do? Fans are fans, right? But they,
sure.
To your point, if they love nostalgia, I find, and
Mm-hmm.
they get how many Cliff Burton T-shirts do you see on 17-year-olds that wouldn't bloody know a thing about him? Weren't even,
Sure.
Of course, they're not even, but they have this thing where they go for the myth of the legend, as opposed.
Well, we kind of have that too because we've been around for so long. But we also continue to make new records. So a lot of times when we do play these things, and usually every time we tour or play, we're one of those bands that won't throw away our old catalog. We always keep a consistent amount of like older songs in our set list, just because I get it. There's people that, that are our age that grew up listening to us that don't know the new stuff. But then there's new fans that only know the new stuff. So we try to keep it as best as we can, because when you get to 9 records, that's when building a set list gets really tough, to please everybody. And if you're only playing a half hour or 45 minutes, something's got to get cut sometimes. So, I understand the nostalgia bit, but to your point too, there's a lot of young people that it's just a bit more of just having that allure for something that's retro, and not I don't really know how to put it, but I agree with you. I agree with you.
Yeah, it's just so weird. I remember when Countdown to Extinction came out, this sort of thing, and I had the T-shirt, but then you see kids that are the same age I was when it came out wearing the same T-shirt, a reprint of the same T-shirt, an updated design or what have you. And my point has always been, and I've expressed this a fair bit on the show, but don't you want your own bands from your own era? Don't you want to get right into it? And I suppose that's what the metalcore thing was about too, and the deathcore thing as well. And a lot do that, but particularly with the legacy and the traditional metal fans. So broadly speaking, they get into power metal, death metal, black metal, all of that sort of stuff. They tend to worship at the altar of these older bands, and I think that's okay. But forge your own path ahead and find your own bands and be in the moment with your own bands rather than buying into.
Well, I mean that goes to speak to some of the some bands coming out, because what they'll do, and there's no knock, because every band is influenced by what they grew up with for the most part. But there's a lot of bands that come out that don't really bring anything new. They'll just go back and copy what was done, say, in the 80s, verbatim. And then you have a lot of younger kids who like those bands, love those bands, but in turn, they won't listen to the older bands that these bands are directly ripping off. You know what I'm saying? So they'll be like, I love this band. They're like, oh, if you love them, you must have heard these guys. They're like, no, I never heard of them. You'd be like, really? Because they've been doing it since 1983, So it's always, I always think it's good when music listeners do their homework a little bit too. You can expand your mind a little bit, broaden your horizons, kind of, I don't know, try to have a little more larger scope when you're listening to certain genres and see, but
yeah, extreme metal's got a lot in common with jazz, and there's a couple of reasons for that. Okay, the first and the biggest one that I know of is that extreme metal, like jazz, is the only truly globally, or universal is the better term, musical genre, meaning that you can go to Saudi Arabia and find an extreme metal band as you can go to Chile and United States, etc. You can't do that with hip hop. Okay, even though hip hop gets the mainstream media's huge push behind it, same with jazz. You can find a jazz band in Saudi Arabia as you can everywhere else in the world.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, the person that turned me onto that was Jello Biafra back in the 90s. I remember him talking about it. He was noticing that no matter wherever he went, there was Morbid Angel T-shirts. I think that's what the quote was.
Okay.
And he picked up on that, and he said he'd never seen anything else quite like it. But yeah, it's to your point, I think, about you guys being blue collar and working class. The genre is immersive in that we're not passive. Oh, look at what we look like, basically, too. You can tell what we're into for the most part, depending on the day, too, I suppose. And I think it's a wonderful thing about the investment. But you said something early on, which is somewhat troubling, to be quite honest with you. I mean, you guys have been doing it as long as anybody, and you deserve to be able to make a career out of it. But has it not been that way for you, just on the financial front?
No, it's definitely not. I mean, we, I've said this in other interviews. At times I feel maybe earlier on, we didn't, there was a certain point in music where everything had to be categorized. When I was younger, there wasn't so many categories, like this type of metal, this genre, everything's really put in their boxes now. So earlier on, there wasn't too many boxes to check. So what would happen is sometimes we'd be too metal for the hardcore crowds, and then transversely we'd be too hardcore for the metal crowds. So we always kind of fell into this weird gray area. And, although we could go play with a punk rock band, but we could also play with a super thrash metal band, and we would do just fine, but we never, we were always kind of a black sheep. So plus it's like, a lot of the stuff that you have to do as a band, unless you're very lucky, which a lot of bands are, but you kind of have to go where the crowd is, so to speak. Like if you really want to make this your living, especially these days, there's certain things that you have to do. You're not just going to be able to be like, this is who we are, big deal. No, you've got to go out and do all these things that take you up in the food chain a little bit. And that's stuff that we're not always willing to do that, especially when it comes to like changing your style or incorporating clean vocals or, stuff like that a lot of bands do. not all of them, but a lot of bands do to kind of attain to that next level, that to move up in the food chain as far as trying to make it a living. But yeah, we've had our times where we've done a lot of tours, but we're all getting older too. So it's not easy to, go out and not come back with a whole lot of money. So, but we're too dumb to quit. So we just keep doing it. And, and if we come back with if we come back with enough to pay our bills and do okay, then we invest more time in it, So, yeah, it's not easy. I mean, I've numerous, some of my best friends are in full-time bands and that's what they do. And I understand that lifestyle, I've seen it and lived it somewhat and a little bit, but, I don't know if that's the type of lifestyle that I would want to live, being a full-time band, in a full-time band, that's all you do, Yeah. So it's, it's, I don't know.
It is what it is. Bit of fate and destiny.
It is what it is. I mean, we want to do it as much as we can. And if it becomes a little bit more profitable to do that, because, we live in the real world and bills have to get paid, then, we'll do it more. But we're still willing to do it for fun, because that's what we've always done it.
What's the main breadwinner then for you? Are you a graphic artist?
Yeah, I own a tattoo shop. I've been tattooing for like 35 years. Owned my own shop for 25. And then I do graphic design and art and just about anything else on the side. So I have a business to look after as well. So leaving, cutting up and leaving for months at a time is not the best business model as an owner. So you have a responsibility to that. So, but that's where my bread and butter is at, mainly, is tattooing.
Yeah. What city do you live in?
Cleveland, Ohio.
Was that one of those cities, a bit like Melbourne here, that was really hit hard through the pandemic with lockdowns? Yeah,
we were shut down. My business was shut down for close to 3 months. And that was tough. We were, financially able to withstand that, but I mean, it got difficult after 3 months, let alone having to take care of your employees as well. I had lots of other avenues I could earn money. But a lot of my employees they're full-time tattooers, and when you can't tattoo for 3 months, it gets rough. So it was awful. It was really bad. So we were able to, navigate through that and get everybody back to work. And, it was what it was, man. It was really shitty, especially when you could go places and other places were open that were someplace, you could go to
Florida.
You could go to a Walmart or a Home Depot, and those places were open. You're like, really? Okay. So, but what are you going to do? That's kind of how it was. So
it was a frightening reminder that we all tend to submit ourselves to authoritarianism a little too easily, in my view.
I'm right there with you, man. I'm right there with you. So, I mean, people will be convinced of just about anything, if either you scare them enough or you just, impose some type of threats to them. They'll fall in line for the most part. Just the nature of people.
Listening to Jordan Peterson talking to Gad Sad last night. He's a very good chat if you get a chance to listen to it. He's had a number of conversations with him, but this last one I think was probably the finest one yet. But he was talking about the nature of hell itself and how in authoritarian regimes it's not the fear of retribution from the Stasi, from those that are up the top. It's the inclination of those that are around to keep everybody complicit to the authoritarian nature.
That's absolutely true. I mean, that's kind of like I addressed that a little bit on one of the songs on the record. We're not a political band, and I don't ever preach because who am I? I'm not a perfect dude, but the song Thought Crimes is somewhat akin to that thought that, we are being manipulated in so many ways, whether it's through marketing or everything around you is kind of pushing some type of agenda on you. And if you're not cognizant of that, you could fall into a lot of traps. I mean, it works, it's all around you. So, it's almost unavoidable. But as long as you kind of have in your mind that like everyone's trying to get you to do something, so you have to be kind of aware of that when you're going through life, or you know, bad things can happen. You know.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, I just, God, I could talk about this topic for ages. Yeah, but
I could do, but
it just annoys the hell out of me. I mean, my father-in-law had to escape Croatia, a communist regime, otherwise he would have been killed. And I think a lot of people in the Western Hemisphere, particularly us Anglo-Celtic types, not you and I mean, but white liberals or what have you, mate, they seem to be so intent on turning us into this fucking bloody authoritarian cesspit and through identity culture and intersectional politics and all this sort of stuff. And it's not so-called people of color that are doing it for the most part. It's white liberals. You only have to turn on Twitter or what have you to see that for yourself. And I don't understand how we got to that point. It's we're so very lucky to live in this epoch in history where nobody's knocking and bashing down our door to kill us or our family.
It's a weird time, is it not? It's a very strange time. Where are you calling me from? Whereabouts are you?
Just a little south of Brisbane in Australia, so okay. Gold Coast. Yeah, so probably I went to Hawaii, to be honest, and it didn't look any different to where I'm living. So sort of in that part of the world.
I've been to Brisbane before. I like it. Had a good time there.
Yeah, lovely city, and
I found it really nice. I thought it's kind of blue collarish, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, blue collarish. It never goes below. I mean, I've got my jacket on. I don't bloody need to. It's in the middle of winter here, but it's probably about 21 degrees now. So we never gets too cold. It's, as I say, I honestly believe this. I think throughout history, this is probably one of the easiest places ever to live right now. And in this particular, where I'm from here, because, you get food on the table. We've got a welfare state here in Australia too. So, I mean, we got nothing to complain about, but people do.
Right.
Hey, I want to ask you a question. I spoke to Dave Matrice about this as well, but working with Tony Brummel and Victory Records, the question's got to come up, right? Because there was that expose a couple of years ago where even former bands wanted to fight him and all sorts of stuff. But what was your experience?
Well, not a very good one. I mean, honestly, I never saw him much. You never really did. At least we didn't. I mean, if we played in Chicago, he wouldn't be there, and et cetera, et cetera. And you kind of had to work through go-betweens to ask him any questions. And, and like a lot of bands, we kind of feel like we didn't get our fair shake there, although we did sign a contract. So, sometimes you're like, well, you just got to fucking shut up and take it. You know what I mean? Because you just signed a contract. So that's how it goes. Although, that being said, the last time I did see him, we were playing in Chicago and he was there and he was fucking drunk as fuck. And, and then he came up to me and was talking to me like we were best friends forever. I'm like, dude. And then I just kind of let loose. I'm like, you're a fucking asshole, dude. I'm like, you fucking suck and all this shit. And he's like, what are you talking about, man? And I'm like, and at that point, I just didn't really care. I'm like, whatever, dude. I'm like, whatever. But he didn't have a great experience on that label. I mean, we were stuck there for a lion's share of our career. Before we put out 4 records on Victory, which when they ended up selling Victory, they sold to a larger company that just basically buys publishing rights.
Concord.
And so we those records that we put out on Victory will never legally see the light of day again. I mean, there's no we tried to work with that company to try to get the rights to reissue any of them. And they make it pretty much logistically impossible. And they have no inkling to put them out themselves, because they own like Bob Dylan's catalog and shit. They don't give a fuck about Ringworm. So it's like, then let us do it. But then they're like, nah. So those records will just, never come out again, really, legally. So
thank God for streaming. This is where streaming. I mean, I know you don't see a bloody dime for it, but at least your music gets to live to fight another day.
Yeah, I mean, we've gone as far as even when we were trying to get off that label by the second record because we knew it wasn't really going anywhere for us because the times are changing. Then it was like, but we were trying to get off that label. And we would oftentimes when we couldn't get product, I would just go out and buy blank CDs before a tour and just burn as many CDs as I could and just give them away. If someone came to the merch table, I'm like, do you have this record? They're like, no. I'm like, now you do. Here you go. I would just give out burned copies of them because, we're not going to see any money from Victory anyway. So I might as well give them our record, Yeah. So it's not the best experience.
No. Well, that's yeah. I think your experiences. Or Dave was emphatic that he didn't have any issues, and I don't think he was bullshitting either. From Jungle Rot, sorry, I was pointing out.
Yeah.
But I mean, look, you can be inside the same family, nuclear family, and have a different experience with parents too. So
absolutely, I know some bands that got along with them fine. I know a lot of people that basically drove down there and walked into his office and threatened to kill him. He didn't do that, but again, like I said, it's like, well, he may have been. How do I like to put it? I guess he wasn't stupid. He's not a dumb businessman. He's very intelligent when it comes to that stuff. So, unethical, maybe, most likely, but when you sign a contract, there's no stipulations for someone being unethical, So, it is what it is.
Well, I think you guys have landed on your feet now.
What's that?
Yeah. You've landed on your feet now with Nuclear Blast, though, and that's the other thing.
I mean, we did fine with our lab with Relapse. When we moved to Relapse, that was a breath of fresh air as well. It was great working with them. I'm like, oh, cool, and so far so good with Nuclear Blast. So, I'm just glad we're not on Victory.
Did you find it odd that Relapse didn't want the option for the next album?
Well, not really, because it was such a weird time, because you got to think too, for 2 whole years, all bands were doing was writing music. That's it. So when it came time for our record, they're like, we've already got like 20 releases that are bottlenecked, ready to come out. So we're not getting any younger. So it's like, if we do it, okay, but we probably couldn't get your record out until 2024. Their releases are so backed up. And then you had the pressing plants, which couldn't keep up with the vinyl demand. And everything just kind of bottlenecked because people didn't quit creating music. They just couldn't put it out. So these labels were just jam packed. And, we didn't really bitch about it. They're like, no, we're just going to pass. And we're like, that's fine. I mean, our contract had expired and we did well with them for 3 years. And, we had a good relationship. So we're like, all right, well, let's move on to something new. And then Nuclear Blast happened. And so it all kind of worked out.
Yeah, indeed it has. Yeah. And what about Australia? You're mates with the guys in Mindsnare, obviously, but have you been down here? And what's your impressions of the audience here?
We fucking love it down there. Like, it's so strange that a band like ours that we can't manage to kind of get into certain circles, but yet we've been down to Australia and New Zealand 3 times, and some huge bands have never been down there at all. I always find it strange, but every time we come down there, it's a freaking blast. We actually may be down there this year at some point.
Oh, great. So, fantastic.
That's the scoop on that, but we don't know yet, but maybe. But when we do, we have a blast. I mean, I don't know. The crowds are awesome. The people are awesome. We've made some friends, lifelong friends from our first tour down there that we still talk to, that come and visit us here in the States. I actually stayed after our final tour, actually, because I tattoo. So I stayed an extra 2 weeks and just traveled and tattooed at different tattoo shops. Wow. It was great. I mean, so hopefully we can get down there again. I mean, the people are cool. The venues are cool. Everything's cool. We always have a blast.
Yeah, I think you suit us. You know that. I just got a vibe from some bands, and some bands feel like as though they're tailor-made for the Australian audience. There's a group called Dream Killers that you may or may not have heard of. They're from Brisbane, and I would love to see you guys do. If you tour, and it sounds like as though that's on the cards, I'd love it if Dream Killers could be on the bill with you guys, because as a 1-2 punch, man, it'd be brilliant.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, we're up for whatever. Yeah, we always seem to get along because Australians just seem to have thick skins, and they kind of get our humor because we don't really kiss anybody's ass. We don't go up there and be like, "Hey, we love you." We bust balls, and we get mean and we get rowdy, and you guys seem to just click with that, and we're great with that, and everyone has a good time, and it just no one takes anything too seriously. I'm sure Australia's I'm sure they have a lot of people that, like everywhere else, there's a certain percentage that, find everything offensive. You can't get away from that anymore. But Australia's always been, like I said, a really thick-skinned place. They could take a joke, they could bust balls right back at you. We like that. You know what I mean? So we get along well with that.
Yeah. You're right about what you say. I don't think it's too different to the United States like that. I think there's, at any given time, mate, there's less than 5% of the people that make 95% of the fucking noise. And that's what we're all going through at the moment. But we've just got to realize that and not kowtow to it. And,
I mean, we don't go out of our way to, we don't go out of our way to offend anybody. We're just playing music, and, and we just have fun. And if someone gets offended, well, I'm sorry. You know what I mean? What can I say? But it is, like, again, it is what it is. If just like anything else, if you do not like something, then there's no one forcing you to listen to it or go see it. So
I know that's the irony in it all. Just look away and it'll go away. But no, they don't want to do that. They want to have a say, and that's that authoritarianism creeping in. But
that's like that. That's like that everywhere, unfortunately.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah. Well, it's been great to have a chat. I look forward to diving even further into your back catalogue, actually, what I can find, at least anyway. And this album here, mate. Yeah.
You enjoying the new one then?
Yeah, I like it a lot. Yeah, there's been a couple of very good albums. Till the Dirt have got a great album. Kelly Schaefer from Atheist has got a new album out too. There's this one, and this week's been a good week, actually. There's been the Cavalera brothers, Max and Igor did that Bestial Devastation and Morbid Visions re-release, which I like quite a bit.
Did they completely re-record those?
100%, yeah.
Wow. I saw that. I haven't heard it yet. Of course, I'm a fan of the really early Sepultura stuff, the first few records. And then I'm friends with Derek, who's the current singer of Sepultura.
Oh, nice. Yeah, cool.
Yeah, he's a Cleveland guy. He's a great guy. And they're still a good band. I just, I grew up on the, Beneath the Remains and Schizophrenia, and pretty much up to Arise. That's kind of my sweet spot with that band. Really, that's just what I grew up with. But I'd like to check those out then, probably.
Yeah, check it out. They've done a great job. I have to dive a bit deeper and find out who helped them with the production side of things. But that was the thing that was most impressive, is that you could hear everything. It wasn't, it always reminded me of like those two albums. Their initial recording sounded like they were recorded in a rehearsal room with a tape. Just press record.
Probably was. I mean, Schizophrenia, Morbid Visions. I mean, those. Those are very primitive recordings, but they have character, and they have like a little. There's something about those things. You could hear the passion and when they're playing. And bands, probably a lot of bands strive for that. They'll spend millions to get that sound, to try to capture that type of sound when it's, it's such a time capsule, it's hard to reproduce.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. Well, they've done a killer job. I can't stand re-recordings and re-releases for the most part, because just about every band fucks it up. Look what Cradle of Filth, or Danny Filth, more to the point, did with Cruelty and the Beast. With that one, it's wrong,
Well, I mean, that's also been brought up to us, because with our previous catalog, the Victory stuff, we can't get it. Someone's like, why don't you just re-record it? And we're like, I don't know if we want to do that either, because there's something about those records are those records, So, yeah, I can see where some bands feel like they need to do it, but it never quite works out the way they want it to.
You're right, it doesn't. And you are in a bind that way, so I can completely understand if you decide to go down that route. But all I would say is you've got such a bright future based on what I've heard here with Seeing Through Fire, that you just don't need to. I mean, people will find, you know what, fans are resourceful, mate. They find the old stuff, that.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So, but like I said, those records can't legally come out, but, maybe someday you'll see them somewhere,
I hope so. Just go to, you know what it's like in Indonesia and Malaysia and places like that, mate.
Yeah.
You can get anything printed up you want in those sort of places and then, go around on tour. What are they going to do? Sue you? Sue you for your own material? Good luck.
Yeah, right. Now we'll see. We'll see how that goes. But
cool, mate. Yeah, well, thank you very much. I hope to see you down here sometime soon, as you've pointed out.
no
It's
worries.
probably likely. So,
as a matter of fact, if we are able to make a trip down there this year, I think it more or less probably starts where you're at.
Oh, fantastic. Okay. No worries. Yeah. Well, it'd be great to see you guys live.
Yeah, we'd like to do it. It's got to work. It's not easy for bands from the States to come down there. It's expensive. It's even more expensive now than it's ever been. Obviously, everything is. So it's just a matter of someone willing to bring us down and us willing to, everyone needs to be willing to lose money,
Yeah.
And you just got to do it for just the love of playing and traveling and getting to see your friends and screaming at a bunch of people you don't know.
Yeah. Well, you're right about your point there about there being a glut of releases. We've had a lot of tours post-COVID as well, which I think's put a burden on the hip pocket of the average punter, working punter, if you like. And I know a few tours, like the Jungle Rot tour, was actually pulled through.
Oh, it didn't happen?
It didn't happen. Dave actually told me it was lack of ticket sales. It just, I don't know any of these people. I know a couple of them, like Soundworks and a few of the other ones, the bigger ones, but some of the smaller, more boutique ones. I'm not saying you've got to be careful. I'm definitely not saying that, but I've just noticed they're the ones where the tour gets, it's up and then it's pulled. And it's like, well, what's your business model around this? To your point, are you big enough to lose money, or is it a I know a lot of this can become a Ponzi scheme, unfortunately, too, where the band previous pays for the next band, and a bit like what we saw with Soundwave and AJ, eventually the house of cards collapses at some point because it's just the burden of it all becomes too much. But I just hope that the boutique promoters and touring agencies here, mate, they don't burn the bands specifically and the Australian fans either with some of these things.
That's why we're optimistic, but we're also cautious too. We're working with trustworthy people, but it just has to be right, especially when you're traveling halfway across the globe. So,
it'd be terrible if it wasn't a success in just about every facet for you, but it is what it is.
Well,
right,
every time we've been down there, it's been great every single time, and we have nothing to complain about. So we're excited to try to make it happen again.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Well, fingers crossed anyway. I hope it happens.
Yeah, right on.
Fantastic chat there with James. I get a vibe sometimes that if my association with somebody that I've had a chat with, if it could sort of go a little bit beyond the conversations for the podcast, I sometimes feel like as though I become mates with some of these guys, and James is a good example of it. What a tremendous fella. I really hope that the extreme metal community gets behind them through Seeing Through Fire, because I think they're going to keep on doing it anyway from the sounds of things, but success always makes things, or greater success and a bigger audience always makes things just a little bit easier, doesn't it? Okay, so if you like that chat, there are many more just like it at scarsandguitars.com. Heaps more, as a matter of fact. I'm up to almost 750 podcast episodes that have been posted. Lots and lots. And if you like listening, I reckon you're going to like reading as well. And I've written a book, Scars and Guitars, Conversations from the World of Hard Rock, Heavy Metal and Extreme Metal and Beyond. Click on the link in the banner on the website and you'll be taken to a marketplace of your choice and download a sample. And just, the last thing you're going to do before you go to bed each night is check your phone. Instead of scrolling through inane social media bullshit, how about you download a sample and just read the first couple of pages and see if you like it. No dramas if you don't purchase it, of course there isn't. But it might be something that interests you. So many conversations that I've had are worthy of turning into and expanding on through the print format. And that's what I've done there in the book. I've expanded on the conversations and offered more context to them. So hope you enjoy reading it. Okay, I've got some more information to share with you about the book, but before we get to that, I need to bid you a farewell. My name's Andrew Mackay-Smith and I'm the host of the Scars and Guitars podcast. Until next time, it's a very goodbye for now.
This is Eric Rattan of Cannibal Corpse. You are listening to the Scars and Guitars podcast with Andrew McKay Smith.
I've been the host of the Scars and Guitars podcast since 2017. The first musician I interviewed for the show was David Vincent from Morbid Angel, and things have just snowballed from there. In all, I've posted almost 650 podcast episodes featuring conversations with many of the leading lights of rock, heavy metal, and beyond. It just got to a point where I thought, I need to write a book about all this, so that's exactly what I did. In Scars and Guitars Volume 1, you'll read a heap of deep reveals and commentary, such as Des Fafara talking about Coal Chamber and why the band will never return.
You know, if you're a band just starting out, you need to hear me. Do not start a band with partners. Ever.
Yeah, wise words there. Sage advice, mate, for anybody.
Don't ever, because I can't go do Coal Chamber right now unless I get others involved.
Phil Anselmo talks about the episode in his career which gives him the greatest sense of accomplishment.
I think the staying power of the fans and the staying power of the songs, you know, whether it's Pantera, Down, or Superjoint, the fans remember the songs.
Alex Skolnick from Testament confirms that, yes, playing the guitar in Ozzy's band is anything but an ordinary gig. Will Silent Oz from Dimmu Borgir write a book? Pa from Sabaton gives advice to people who want to start a band.
Look at the team around you, look at the bandmates. If the guys want to be on the stage, then it's all cool. If the guys want to be backstage, then it's not going to be cool.
Current and former members of Cradle of Filth discuss the band's seminal 90s material. Read about the reaction to George Lynch and Mark from Suicide Silence's comments when they throw shade at then President Donald Trump.
We have this idiotic monster, you know, this egotistical, self-aggrandizing, complete piece of shit in there. I just can't understand how we've gotten to this place.
And yeah, we kicked a hornet's nest with Sepultura. Percussive overlord Gene Hoglan talks about recording with Chuck Schuldiner.
Chuck was always, he was very open-minded, and he was into having his musicians that were playing with him just reach out for the best stuff that they had.
Phil Campbell from Motorhead discusses what it takes to get sober. John Five answers his critics who dismiss his tenure with Marilyn Manson.
You know, my name is John Five, and Manson gave me that name, and I had some of the best years of my life in that band and learned a lot.
And we get the lowdown on Treyarch Zagtoth from those who would know, including his mother. All across Scars and Guitars Volume 1, there are moments of tension, relief, tragedy, exhilaration, and throughout it all, you'll obtain insight that I believe no one else has managed to obtain from many of your favourite artists. So treat yourself. Scars and Guitars Volume 1 is currently available as an ebook with a print edition on the horizon. Follow the links attached and download a sample. I'm sure you'll be compelled to read the whole book.